Got it? Okay, so I have Renita first.
Yes, please.
And then I have Deepo, your second, and then Abdul Aziz, your third. Okay, so Renita, you're from the Barbados Cultural Association of BC. Big up, all Barbados crew up in here.
Yeah. No?
All right, so a cultural organization here in BC. I want to hear more about the organization, but I just want to create some context for where you're coming from.
Okay.
Deepo, from the Black Business Ventures Association.
Yes.
All right. And Abdul Aziz, you're from the BIPOC Foundation, right? Okay. So I'll start with you, Renita. Can you kind of just briefly describe the work that you all do, maybe the history, the legacy of the Barbados Association?
Okay, thank you, Michael. So the Barbados Cultural Association has been around for 29 years now. It's predating the time that I've been in Canada, and it started with a group of local Barbadians here as a way to do exactly what the Afro Expo is trying to do: bring the community together, be able to share resources, help one another. And the official mandate for the association is to spread cultural awareness, not just for Barbados but for the Caribbean, throughout the community, and we do that through food, music, cultural events, and so forth.
Amazing, amazing. And it's important because, I mean, what we know about the Black community in Vancouver, everybody's really fractured. You know, if you live in Surrey, you don't know about what's happening in Maple Ridge, you don't know about what's happening in North Vancouver. So to have associations that are really advocating for the community and saying, hey, we want to bring people together through the culture and also sharing the culture, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the best way, and this goes with anything, whether it's with family or friends, the best way to unite people is usually through food and music, right? And so we focus on those two things as it's a really good way to educate and bring people together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Next up, Deepo, I want you to talk about what the Black Business Ventures Association is and maybe its greater role in what you all are doing with the mandate.
No, thank you, Michael. So, Black Business Ventures Association is an organization that helps Black entrepreneurs that are working on technology or technology-enabled businesses. And what we mean by that is if you're building your business where you're not necessarily limited geographically by your storefront or where you're operating, we are able to help you. And one of the reasons why we do that is because businesses like that have unique resources that are kind of dedicated to them. And in some ways, many people within our community that run businesses like this do it siloed in their own bedroom or in their own corner office. But there's a whole bigger community out there that's doing this work and that's trying to connect you to help you progress in it. So yeah, that's what we do. We work with Black entrepreneurs across Western Canada, focused on these type of businesses, and we help them with mentorship support, coaching, but really more importantly, connecting them to the resources that can help them to build these businesses and thrive.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. As we know, with building the capacity, if you have an idea or you have some kind of concept, bringing that to fruition and understanding the many hoops of being an entrepreneur, it requires a community sometimes to build that confidence, right? So it sounds like what you all are doing is helping to support folks on that journey.
Yeah, you're right, and that community piece is actually really big because at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur is really tough. Now, if you're doing a business where you don't have a storefront, where you're not interacting directly with clients, the emotional that you have to go through to even be able to execute this is even tougher. So, most times often, people within our community do it themselves, alone, with family and friends around, and it's challenging, right? So being in that bigger community where you're seeing others going through the same challenge with you, and more importantly, I'll keep saying that there's so much more resources that's actually dedicated to these types of businesses Canada-wide than there are to any other type of businesses. And so many of these resources are unique, and it's a whole rabbit hole to try to figure out that, first of all, figuring your business out, and then figuring out how to find access to these things can be a whole daunting challenge, and that's where we come in, right? So we help bridge that gap between what you're doing as a Black entrepreneur and what these resources are out there that every Canadian is using.
Beautiful, thank you for that. And then lastly, Abdul Aziz, I'll get you to kind of share about BIPOC Foundation, and I think there's a lot of overlap and correspondence with what was been said, and I wanted to hear your take on adding to that.
Thank you. So BBABC Foundation helps Black, Indigenous, and people of color who have small or medium businesses. We provide them with the information, the resources, and the network to start these businesses or upgrade these businesses, similar to what the BBVA does, but it's not just specific to tech. So It can cut across anything, agriculture, art, culinary, it doesn't really matter. We're there to either provide you the resource or connect you with someone who knows someone. And we do that across Western Canada as well. We're also focused on community empowerment and community development, and that is felt first and foremost in where our headquarters is located, which is Lethbridge, Alberta. And so we fund like community initiatives and like local events, projects, programs that like people want to start to empower their community, but they don't necessarily know how to do it, right? So we can endorse it, we can offer them some funding, we can offer them some like advice, right? So aside the whole entrepreneurial startup stage of stuff, the development and the empowerment side of it is key to what we try to achieve as well. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that. And which brings me back to Renita, because I think there's some connection here around when cultural associations or any event, you need funders, you need sponsors, you need to like make sure you can pull something off if you have a big event, right? And so, are you? I mean, in the experience of with the association, are you seeing that there's a lot more, especially I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot more support or an appetite for people wanting to get engaged with the culture and wanting to support the events that you're all putting on?
Absolutely. I think there's been a lot more awareness in general for social causes. Not just in BC or just in Canada, but worldwide. And I think especially the Black Business Association of BC has really been able to capture that and galvanize the community to come out to events such as these. And that translates, earlier with the procurement services panel, they talked about diversity that they're trying to intentionally do with the government, funding that's available, and then we've been able to tap into some of that funding as well. There's special funding for nonprofits, for cultural nonprofits, and then specifically for minority groups. So that's been an increase that we didn't see in years past.
And are you seeing, I recently, especially with like the Arts Council and these different organizations that maybe are trying to bridge that gap for maybe some of the organizations that didn't have someone in the door, or didn't have like the marketing budget or advertising budget to get grant funding, that kind of stuff. So, are those challenges that you all have faced in the past and are seeing different opportunities now that you weren't seeing before?
Absolutely. So in the past, we had challenges with even getting a capacity building grant. They would say you needed to be doing a specific initiative for us to fund that. Now, there are grants for capacity building for nonprofit organizations that you can tap into. So, we've seen a lot more of that happening now.
Beautiful, thank you. And was there anything else you wanted to share about like where you're wanting to see more growth or support, whether it be in community or for business that want, maybe they have a philanthropic arm, for example. So is there any places where you all want to grow and want to see support?
I'm glad you mentioned that, Michael. So the funding aspect is a huge aspect because we can't do what we do without funding, without public support, without government support. However, we are still a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization. So I know that for a lot of people, they may think that, okay, well, volunteerism has to be on my spare time. There are a lot of companies and organizations who actually allow their staff and their employees to take time off to volunteer, and that counts towards whether it's part of the employment or they can get paid time off to do that. And we're always looking for people. It's not necessarily you have to come to an event and man a booth. It could be something as, you're an accountant and you can help us with our bookkeeping. You can advise our board of directors on certain activities. You are a professional chef and you can help advise us on a kitchen for an event that we're setting up. So there's different ways that people can still contribute and participate. They don't have to be from Barbados. We always say, we're for everybody if you love Barbados. And our membership, even our founding membership, is not just Barbadians, but people from all over the Caribbean, from Canada in our membership. We've got people from all over various diasporas.
Beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll go to Depot now. Obviously, we're talking about cultural organizations, but from a community serving foundation and the Association of Building Business, especially in tech, what are some of the growing edges that you're seeing with the folks that you work with, or from a funding perspective? What are some of the growing edges that maybe you've seen in the last 5 years that you want to kind of maybe articulate and bring to the audience here today?
The one thing that I would say, I know there's been a lot more attention put into Black entrepreneurs in the past few years, and there's been so many more dedicated resources that's trying to help entrepreneurs there, and that's great, and that's fantastic. I think one thing that I would say that has really evolved is that many of these legacy programs that have existed for many years, now we're talking decades, many of them are also trying to find ways in in which they can support minority founders, that can support black founders. And that's where, even when you look at where these resources are, where a lot more of those resources are, there's a lot more resources out there that's not necessarily dedicated to black entrepreneurs, but that entrepreneurs from the black community can utilize. And that many of these programs are now looking for entrepreneurs within this community to be part of. And that's the opportunity that's there. That's, a lot of the people we work with, a lot of the entrepreneurs we support, they don't use black specific programming. But at the end of the day, they're able to access these resources just like every other Canadian does, or any other Canadian entrepreneur, and they can use it to their advantage. And we're all Canadians here, and we're all trying to build our success. We're trying to build this community here locally. So if we can make the most of, or play our part, our responsibility in this community, and utilize these resources to build a broader, more prosperous Canadian, we're doing well for ourselves, for our community, and for the country at large.
Beautiful. And I wanted to piggyback off that, in the last year, at least 2 years, especially on the federal government perspective, all the research that's being done around funding capacity limits for a lot of black entrepreneurs. Are you seeing a lot more, mechanisms or programs that you are facilitating as a mediary for maybe there's someone who has a business idea that you can help connect the dots for them from a funding perspective or from an ecosystem perspective?
There are. If you look at many of the federal agencies now that we have, and we had some of them here on the stage this morning and also yesterday, many of them have set up specific teams that's actually dedicated to working with minority groups, black entrepreneurs. The Procurement Canada now has that. Expo Development Council Canada has that. Black Development, Business Development Bank of Canada has that. Like I said, these are all these legacy institutions that have, billions of resources that's dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs that's out there, and they're trying to find ways. It's a long journey here, to be more specific. But one thing I would say as an entrepreneur is that even these organizations are trying to still figure out how to interact with us as a community. So it's a journey for them. Like, as part of the Black Entrepreneurship Program, for example, there's a whole lot of resources dedicated into research through the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. So far, in terms of national gathered data around black entrepreneurship, there's not been a lot. Very few done by Stats Canada, and that's being published right now. But now there are now resources dedicated, just focused solely on black entrepreneurs. So I would say the world is evolving, but it's onto us as entrepreneurs, as people that are operating in this ecosystem, to also stand up and share our voices, and to stand up and be heard. Because at the end of the day, they still need input from us to decide on what works for us. So if any way or in any manner you can be part of that conversation or that discourse, I would highly encourage you to do. All of these agencies does Canada-wide consultation across multiple cities. And so being on the table, listening to those that are actually trying to direct those programming is also another way to get involved. But more importantly, also note that if you as an entrepreneur and you're asking yourself, how do I make the most of this? Approach organizations like BBABC, approach organizations like us and the Bible Foundation, because many of these institutions have, they connect with us directly, and they're constantly also engaging us to say, how can we work with entrepreneurs within your network? Okay, so those are some of the things that I've seen. I think there's a whole lot more that will come. The journey is actually long, and even being an entrepreneur is a long journey. But just know that you have to stand out, you have to be there, you have to put yourself out there to be heard, and you have to also involve yourself in the community as well.
I think that's an important note, especially for people in the crowd, to realize that if we don't show up, they can create the door, right? But if we don't walk through it, it'll close, or it's not relevant anymore. So it's important, these programs are starting to roll out, and more in the private sector, but also in the public sector. You're seeing opportunities, they want to connect with black entrepreneurs, but there's so many different avenues and so many different ways that people get on that journey. So for folks that are maybe have an inkling of inspiration, not to feel overwhelmed, not to feel intimidated, but just to step in and say, what can I learn here? So go to these different booths and ask them, like, what are the things that I need to do to get on that path? And Abdulaziz, I'll ask you from the foundation perspective, are there specific services or gaps that you're helping to help fill with what you all are doing from what's been said already?
Honestly, the reason why the community impact became really important to us is because, especially with the black community, you can tell that there is a lack of trust And that's one of the reasons why these doors, as you said, don't get walked through. Because I've had people come to me at the information booth, ask me, and then they say, but what's in it for you? Nothing, absolutely nothing. I'm just here to help you. I'm here to make sure that like you get to where you want to get to, because I've struggled as well. Like, I'm an entrepreneur and I know how difficult it was like for me to get to where I am right now. And so it's like, it's important for us to be able to provide you with those resources. So it's hard to just say, get rid of your trust issues, because I understand like it's deep rooted and it's become intrusive and like intrinsic. But at the end of the day, you have to make it a thing and become intentional about the fact that yes, I'll be cautious, but at the same time, if I don't take this risk, there will never be any return. And so in that regard, we've made it a thing to find different ways, like creative ways of engaging people. And so we have like fun events and like events like this, where it's like, okay, you come in to meet a variety of people, and if you just came for the food, you came for the food, but you might be walking away with something that's going to be more valuable to you than you anticipated. That's some of the ways that we're closing gaps. Right?
And Michael, can I add something to that? I really want to touch on the importance of just showing up, even just for events like this. So you may think I have nothing to contribute, or I don't require their services. But I don't know if people understand the importance of just having bodies in the door. So if we take this event, for example, next year, when we're ready to plan another one, when they go to corporate sponsors, when they go to government sponsors, they have to be able to say, this many people came through the door, this much revenue happened from the vendors, and that goes a long way. And so I think for people to make a concerted effort to just show up, even if you do nothing else, just showing up is a huge help.
And to speak to that, you know, from a community perspective, if you want to up level and be able to have more events like this, there's, you know, it's breaking through that, it's okay, but actually committing to the ongoing mission of getting more equity into the community, right? And having more access to capital, having more access to sponsorships, because they see it's worth it, right?
If we can't demonstrate the need, they're not going to give us what we need to actually fulfill that.
Right. So that's a two-way street, right? So for us as a community to be able to support organizations like the BBABC, organizations like the association showing up is huge. I love that you said that.
I think there was somebody yesterday who mentioned there was some sort of like a $10 million fund and only 50 applicants so far. What do you think is going to happen next year? That fund is going to go away and it'll dry up because not enough people actually applied to it, because from their perspective, there's no need for it. We offered them $10 million and nobody took it.
Right. I was going to say, I want to bring you in too, because I love what you said about the trust building piece, because maybe multiple generations, you know, you signed the thing, they say they'll help you, but nothing ever happens, right? So we're kind of in a new era now where we're trying to like break a mold, get new opportunities, and so there's this weird in between where we're having to build a new environment, a new ecosystem where there's mutuality and there's reciprocity. And I think that's a new, I guess, for maybe legacy like older generations, our elders, who didn't have all that, right? They just had, it's me and my community, if I don't make it happen, nobody else is gonna help me, right? Or I don't wanna take a loan because the bank is gonna try to get the money from me. You know, so I think there's a lot of psychological factors that we're facing against, but I think, you know, having more organizations like yourselves who say, we have no skin in the game, we're not trying to get 5% off the top, like we're here to serve a need, to serve a purpose of helping you, you know, build your business, build your dream so that everyone can prosper. And I think that's something that's really important. I wanted to yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's also the fact that I feel like one thing that we need to stop doing is like talk, right? I appreciate the fact that like with a lot of organizations that are around us and like do the same kind of work that we're trying to do in terms of helping like minority groups, there's a lot of action now. Like there's events going on in this place and in that place, and there's programs. And as stakeholders or as community members who these programs are being built for, it doesn't hurt in any way to take advantage, right? Like, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I'll look into that information, and then you never do. But it absolutely doesn't hurt to say, oh, do you know what, I'm going to attend that meeting. I'll start that conversation. It's not going to change anything. What, a 2-hour conversation with someone about how you could potentially change your life is not going to hurt you, right? And if the trust is missing, that's an easy way to build it, right? Because it's not like commitment as if you have to pay $5 to be at this meeting and we're going to need you to do another $10 charge afterwards. No, nothing like that, right? Just have the conversation, and at the very least, it would be nice to even just talk to someone because sometimes you don't even have one, right?
Going it alone, right? Like we're so used to, we don't have any problems, we just do it by ourselves. That mentality has to be overcome, right? We have to realize it takes a village. You know, you're being a solo entrepreneur in a silo, it's not going to help you. Whereas there's so many government programs, there's so many culturally appropriate programs that people understand the cultural nuances of how money, the conversations about money and debt and risk. It's more nuanced, and I think people like you all are really helping to pilot that and move that forward. Go ahead.
One thing I want to say is about also some misconceptions you could have, and many of us had it even when we got started, is you think when you're an entrepreneur that you're servicing private people and you can make your money and you can figure out yourself, and you're quite right. But many times often when it comes to accessing resources, it's not just how intelligent you are or how articulate you are about what you're doing. It's also about relationship, and that's one thing that we miss a lot within our community, whereby sometimes often we think we're being heard just because we put ourselves forward, but because we don't have that relationship and we haven't spent time to cultivate that relationship. I came from the venture world where we funded private businesses before I got into the government space where we help businesses. And many times often, you don't get a check from your private investments if they don't know you. They don't know who you are, they can't see you, they can't understand what you're made of, you don't get anything. Actually, that's how it is like to also get in resources. So many times often you think maybe you see an application, call for application, you're trying to put in the application in and apply for that program, and I'm an entrepreneur, and you apply and you don't hear anything. Sometimes it's because they don't know you. So for many years I worked with many agencies locally that support entrepreneurs generally, and they're supporting entrepreneurs in the technology innovation space. And oftentimes, me at the back end trying to look at people that I want to support and making a decision on who to support or who not to support, we'll make an objective decision about what your project is. But at the end of the day, that decision that then goes between whether you get it or you don't get it, sometimes often falls on do they even know you. And so oftentimes, you make your really good, nice speech and your well-curated plan and your business case and you submit it, but nobody knows you. And all these organizations have mechanisms to which how they connect to the entrepreneurs they work with. Because they don't just want to fund someone that's out there that with a plan, they want to see the person they're funding. So really at the end of the day, it's all about relationship at the end, and working through organizations that are in that community can help you break that barrier and get in it.
Yeah, and I would say you're doing the legwork. So this is like easy. If you have an idea, you just ready to pop. There are agencies, there are individual organizations that are willing to do the legwork where that you would have to do that. Go to the golf club, go to these networking events to get in front of the people to get you that opportunity. There are actual organizations dedicated to doing that. So I really wanted to advocate for that. Go ahead.
And just to echo that, there's a saying that people do business with those they know, like, and trust.
Yes.
And I think if we focus on hitting all three of those pillars, make sure people know you, make sure they like you, because you can't be abrasive and arrogant and offensive. So they have to know you, they have to like you, and they have to trust you. They have to trust that you're going to be able to do what you say you do. And it goes back to the trust issue we were just discussing, right? There's a little bit of skepticism. So if you hit all those three pillars, then yes, those opportunity comes to those they know, like, and trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was also gonna I wanna absolutely commend everyone who's out here today, because you don't understand with what. Sorry, what was Renita? Yeah, with what Renita said, you don't know how much you're contributing to what an organization like the BBVA is trying to achieve, right? Whether you paid an entrance fee or you paid for for a product at a vendor booth or something like that, you're making a huge difference, right? And it's a matter of the fact that we acknowledge, right, as a black person, I acknowledge why you have the trust issues. I have them as well, right? But when you take the step of actually attending an event like this and you actually become intentional about building relationships and getting to network, and you have a smile on your face and you're saying, I like that, I want to know more, that's honestly all we're asking for. I'm not asking for you to immediately say, you know what, I'm going to go on all 50 websites of all the organizations who are out there who have these no. Just be a part of stuff like this and take the leap of faith with starting and contributing in one way or the other, and that will in turn benefit you. There's a saying that if you if your heart is in the right place, what you're looking for is going to come to you. And even if it's not about like benefiting you specifically, it might benefit your next door neighbor or your cousin or something like that, someone like that. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's important to recognize there's a lot of intangibles that happen at an event like this. I was saying that this morning. It might not be a direct sale. It might be saying 5 words to somebody, a word of encouragement. There's so many things that you might not even see the benefit that would come to fruition maybe for another 5 years. But it's about being there and showing up and having the intention of wanting to make a difference that actually, that catapults change. So no, I really appreciate you bringing that forward. And I didn't ask earlier, but if there are specific like services or anything offering the services that you wanted to share with folks about what your organization provides. And I'll start with you, Renita. Obviously, it's a more cultural organization, but just getting that word out.
Yeah, and so we're not as much a service-based organization as these other two. We do provide help and resources. So for new immigrants that come into the country, a lot of people, and there are government services that do this as well, but there's certain nuances and minor things. So for example, we recently had somebody who came here from Barbados, and I got a message from somebody just saying, I'm trying to send mail back to Barbados, I don't even know where to go. You know, and it's like a really minor thing, and I said, oh, go to Shoppers Drug Mart, there's always a Canada Post, and find one in your neighborhood, right? So, you know, another person was asking about, well, how do I sign up for healthcare services, right? So the awareness of what do you do, where is my community, I'm here alone, I don't know anything, I don't know what's what or who's who. Just making sure people can feel connected, that they know that there's people that they can rely on if they need help, if they just want to socialize so that they don't feel isolated. And that's something, especially during COVID, that was a huge issue, right? Everybody just felt really isolated, and we had to then find ways that we could connect everybody virtually, especially when it came to seniors. That was a huge thing with our senior community, and who are also technologically not really as adept as we are. So then we had to find ways to reach out to them, connect with them, if it meant calling them on the phone and things like that. So our service is really more so keeping the community connected, and then secondary to that is then when we do the events that allow you to participate, have a good time, enjoy the food, the culture, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Just add something to that. And I don't know, we were talking about like, me and Renita a second ago about like how the simple things make a huge difference. And that's why like you can't underestimate like volunteering, right? Because you might think, I'm not really sure what I can contribute, but you can show someone Canada Post, like literally, that's it. And you don't know the difference you've made in that person's life, but that's such a simple thing to do, right? But like the impact that it ends up making is huge, right? So yeah.
It's the small things, and I think, and I wanted to mention about the small things that help create inclusion and that create a sense of belonging. And I think, especially for immigrant communities, where if there's a small population, this is not Toronto, right? Like in BC, it's a little bit more fragmented, it's smaller. So having these touch points, whether that be, just reaching out, especially our elders who have done so much to bring us here, how can we give back? And so I really commend like those little small things of helping people just feel included and understanding how the world works here in BC. So thank you for that. And I'll go to you.
I'll put it simply. There are so many resources out there that help entrepreneur. However, if you're working on a technology or technology-enabled business and you identify as a Black entrepreneur and you're here in Western Canada, you should speak to us, because many of the work that we do complements many of the services that you may already be receiving. But one thing that we do, and we do very well, is because our organization is made up of people that have worked in the system before, so they understand how things work. And part of the advantage and the value that we bring to you is that we don't have any bias against you, or we don't have anything to directly benefit from you, and so we can be very honest with you, which is actually sometimes hard as a Black entrepreneur to get. We can be really honest with you in terms of where you are and also when you want to get resources, because we don't give those resources directly. However, we can help you get into those doors. So technology enabled, you or anyone that's kind of working in this space, just engage us and we will point you to where you need to go or what you need to do. And you can find us directly through our website in blackventures.org, so BLACK ventures.org. Or you find us on LinkedIn as well, Black Business Ventures Association. We're also at a booth here, just at 508 here in this conference, and so we can be happy to engage with you and to see how we can help you.
Thank you, Deepo. Go ahead.
Okay, so just like Digo said, we have a lot of programs, right? We have an accelerator program, we have a business plan program. After 8 weeks, you start out without like a business plan, and 8 weeks after you have a business plan. That's magical, by the way. We have like a financial program to get you like financially ready for your business and whatnot. There's all these programs, but the one thing that we like, aside like connecting you with the people like Digo said as well, like helping you build your network, helping you access funding, is gauging where you're at. Because a lot of people like, it sounds easy, but people misunderstand exactly where they're at. I definitely did it. I thought I was in a I was way more advanced than I actually was. And you might actually be advanced and you don't even know it yet, you're underselling yourself, but being able to gauge exactly where you're at within 15 minutes, which is what we have like on our website, BIPOCfoundation.org. It's a 15-minute conversation where someone will speak to you about what you're trying to achieve and say, okay, this is where you're at, and this is what it makes sense to do next. It might not mean that you absolutely have to take our program, it's not about that. It might mean that right now you should be already talking to entrepreneurs, you should be talking to someone at the BBVA, right? And connecting you with that resource immediately is what we might be able to do for you. On the other end, if you care about like just community initiatives and fostering like social impact, especially with like minority groups, that's huge on what we're trying to do. Like recently we sponsored a few artists and organizations who are trying to achieve like local work, but they didn't even have anywhere to start. We're not a charitable organization, but this is something that we can absolutely like invest in if we saw the need for it. And that all comes from the involvement that you guys have. Like either it's like you saying, hey, I want to be able to provide my time, I want to provide information, I want to provide this and that towards something like that, and then we can say, hey, there's a volunteer who's interested in volunteering for your next event, and now you have someone who can help you make such a difference, right? So gauging where you're at and then helping you like in terms of creating more impact in your community, that's huge in what we try to achieve.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I think that's all the time we have. I don't know if there's any questions in the crowd. We have time for one question if you have any. We're all good? Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to thank you all for the contribution. Individually, you all work in very different arenas, but I really appreciate all the support you give to the community, culturally, financially, organizationally, access. It's really important. So it takes all of us doing different things to come together, creating that unity. Right. That what is it, moja, or there's that word that represents that. But we really appreciate that, and thank you so much for all of the insight you've given us, and also thank you all for being here, for showing up, right? For being here, for the commitment. So I want to thank you, and then we're going to take a little quick break. DJ Floyd's going to spin some tunes, and we'll come right back. Yes.